Did you look? I haven't looked at it.
I just looked in our urban water management plan. It's kind of highlighting all those things.
I don't.
Oh,
Shoot, I'll have to look at that. I don't recall there being a publication requirement. There could be.
It said public hearing, and I just figured it
why does it say it's the tier 2? Why do we
Talking about
tier 2? 6:30 tier 1. What happened to tier 1?
so many days, and
So
then
I
you
was
have the
looking at the
hearing.
thing. Where's tier 1?
I just
Yeah.
don't remember too far.
I know that they are for Sequest, so we figured it was the same.
I'll look at that tomorrow. Did you call me at my office?
Yeah, you were on the phone, and then I was going to leave. No big deal. We're gonna put the agenda out Monday since it's special meeting.
And is that Tuesday? That's Wednesday night. That's the second.
We're going ahead with the Drought open tomorrow.
Yeah.
Cloudy, windy.
Coffee or water?
10 to 20 mile an hour. Sprinkles, showers here and there.
Who else gonna play?
I embarrassed getting into playing. He was going, it's supposed to rain.
Yeah.
Wind, it's shower.
Fair weather player.
First 35.
And Dan Bay's great.
A fun.
Right. Hold on. I'd like to call the special meeting of the Paradise Irrigation District to order on March the 27th at 6:30 p.m. Would you please stand with me and pledge allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please. Here.
Vice President Hunt,
Here.
President Duncan,
Here.
Director Flesher,
Here.
Director Kellogg.
Okay, if you wish to speak tonight, we are turning cards in to Georgiana. You don't have to have them, but if you want to, that'll let us know how many people want to speak on each soapbox. We will be given 2 times to speak tonight. One will be public participation, and the other will be public input after the presentation about communication workshop. Turn it over to General Manager George Barber.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out tonight. Basically, we're at that point, really close to where we have a trigger point in our evaluation of our water supply. So tonight we're going to give you a presentation on where we're at and what kind of things we're considering and seek your input. So I really appreciate you coming tonight, and please feel free to speak your piece.
Now is the time for public participation. This is individuals will be given an opportunity to address the board regarding matters not scheduled on the agenda. Although the board cannot take action on any matter not on the agenda, comments will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Opportunity for public comment or on agenda items will be provided at the time they are discussed by the board, with comments limited to 5 minutes per agenda item. Do you have any cards?
I do, I'd like to address the board as
Thank you. My name's Ward Habriel, President Duncan. Thank you for this meeting tonight. And frankly, I wish we'd have done this a little sooner. I think it's a great idea. It's also a wonderful venue. We could get hundreds of people in here If they'd have known about this meeting a little sooner. I want to touch on a couple of things that I don't see on the agenda, and maybe speak later on after we hear the presentation. And that is that I've been out of town twice in the last month, and some of the communities that I visited and spoke with several people involved in agriculture, they're way ahead of what we're doing here. And of course, I like to brag about what we're doing here. I pass my card out about being on the Water Conservation Committee and say the great things that we're doing. But communities like Santa Rosa, you can't get water in a restaurant unless you beg for it. We're not starting that here yet. Some places, sure, you got to ask a little, but still, it's pretty much automatic. I know a glass of water is not much, but you got to wash the glass too. And there's other things involved as well. Town of Calistoga last month implemented their mandatory conservation requirements. First violation, $50 fine. That's pretty stiff. But they also have a way to reward people who are already conserving and plan to conserve in the future, or who are making changes to conserve. I think that's pretty cool. Several other communities doing the same thing. But people in agriculture are very worried that the rest of us that are not involved in agriculture really don't care about them. They think, you're going to get your water. Hey, you can grow whatever you want. You're just going to raise your prices. I don't think that's at all true. I think we need to set an example about what it is that we can do both in residential and in business in our community to say, look, we can be leaders here. We can take an action here that will show we're on the road to conservation, as well as for violators, we'll take some kind of serious action. Both, I think, are important. I love to say we're going to, we're going to catch more good people with honey, how that goes. But if we don't have a formal system of, hey, I'd like to recognize who's doing a really good job. I mean, you could thank me. I save a lot of water. But we can't just have a series of penalties. I think we need to do something that's positive and let people know we're going to do something positive too. Thank you for the time.
Kind of disappointing that, kind of disappointed that only this few people showed up. Shows that they really don't have much interest. They don't know the seriousness of this drought. It's going to be on for 3 or 4 years because of the rotation of the earth. I don't know if you knew that, but you know it now.
I hope you're wrong.
I hope it's a possibility. But here's what I have, all this information that anybody that wants anything on gray water, I went and had it printed. It cost me $20, but it's worth it if it works. But on the gray water thing, there's about 50 cities in the state of California that I know of that have gone to gray water systems, and they're very, very, very successful. And the town here, I don't know how far they've got with it, but I propose that when a new house is built, you're going to build, you get a permit to build a house. When you put the plumbing in, you put the plumbing in for the gray water. If you use it, it's okay. If you don't use it, it doesn't matter. But it'll be there, hooked up, ready for you to go. And they're thinking on that. They also were working on the permit to for the licensing thing or whatever, not for the plumbing, but for the put it in. And they also the one guy's on the city council. He must have some deal with God because he wants to charge for the grain water from the rainwater that goes into a rain barrel. And I think you should raise heck about that and tell them to stick it, because we're trying to get people to save water, not have more damn permits and stuff. That is just totally not needed, and that's negative thinking. But they are working on the permit. I don't know how far they got because I haven't talked to him, and to put a gray water system in. But anybody wants information, and I'm going to make up a system that people can see the pieces put together. I must be stupid to do this because I don't get paid for it. I'm not making any money out of this thing. It'll be a system that's hooked up that you can come and see. Now you need this check valve, you need this valve to change it if your tank fills and then goes into the sewer. And I'm working on that, but I'm going to make it up so that people can see it. And I hopefully, and I talked to the news guy, when I get it done, I hope, if I don't live long enough, I'm 90 already, I can't last much longer. Maybe God will say, hey, you know, I got to do something. When I get up in heaven, God will say, you the drought you had, you didn't do a darn thing for the people. And I said, yes, I did. I worked on a gray water system. Well, we won't put you down the dumper. We'll put the handle back, you know. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else who'd like to speak to something that isn't on the agenda? Seeing none, we will go on to Drought Communication Workshop. Presentation by General Manager Barber. Water.
Again, thank you for coming. Usually I'm very interactive when I give a presentation, and I let people interrupt me as I go along. Tonight I'm going to ask you, and respectfully the board as well, if you can let my presentation roll through and deal with the questions and answers after. I can scroll back to any slide you have a question on or anything like that. The reason I'm doing that tonight is this is being live fed on the web. Not everybody could see it tonight. So what we want to do is take this presentation and make the video available for the public on our website. So it'll be a little smoother if I get through the presentation and not get it chopped up. So I appreciate that. I'll start off by reminding everybody I am George Barber. I'm the General Manager of Paradise Irrigation District. And back when I was brought on board in 2004, we had just received a report from Boyle. It was a water supply analysis report. And the results of that report basically showed us something that many people in the community didn't know in the past. And that was that no matter how big we build our reservoirs, or how many reservoirs we have, our watershed is our watershed, and we're still exposed to droughts. And so that kind of stuck with me, and as I got my feet on the ground here and running, we put together a 2008 water supply support report that kind of furthered that. Oops, over here. This is our new motto. We just adopted this recently. It's our water, our future. It's both short-term and long-term. We need to plan for our future at the district, the future of the community for many years to come, but our future is also next winter. And as you'll see tonight, that we live year to year. We're in a perpetual drought at PID, so our future can be as soon as next winter and what it holds. We're going to talk tonight about our exposure to drought, the conservation efforts that we have done and how they've paid off, some long-term solutions that we have been working on for quite some time and will continue to work on, what our current conditions are, explain the conservation rate structure that is being developed at this time, and some recommendations. This is Paradise Reservoir, and this is what we like to see, and we're not there. We're about 12 feet from there as of today. This chart shows that a few things. This brown, or blue, sorry, that's our average water in acre feet that comes into our system on an average annual basis. Oops, wrong button. This red, that's our historical single dry year. So in that year, and that was in the 30s, only 1,763 acre feet came into our reservoirs. And the green is what we used last year, 7,000 acre feet. The blue was our highest year in 2004, 8,349 acre feet. The yellow, that looks better than the red, but that's 5,349 acre feet. That's the average over a 3-year period that happened in the 30s. So you can see that we got what our normal annual average is, but only over a 3-year period. So in today's world, we'd fall behind very quickly. This shows the paradises, and this is the town's annual precipitation going back to 1926. You see how variable this line is. That's the problem. You can do the average 15,000, but that's average over a pretty wide range of numbers. And over here was those dry years in the 20s and 30s. You can see the 76, 77 drought right there. And at the end, this is where we're at in 2013 and where we are so far in 2014. So that's one of the problems, why we have a drought problem more than a water supply problem, because the rain comes, but it comes in some years and not in others. This is our annual demand going back to 1995. In 95, we were about 7,000 acre feet. We had a lot of leaky pipe. In the early 90s, we put in some efforts, and the district hired an extra crew, and we started a pipe replacement project. Accelerated. They've been doing it for a while, but they accelerated it. And you can see going on, we continue to creep up, up, up. And then right around this period, 06, 07, a few changes happened. We tried some leak detection right around then that we ultimately began to do on an annual basis. We did a meter project in there, and all of those things led to this drop to where we were lowest in 2011. And this is what those results. So we've got pipe replacement, we've got polyorthophosphate. You may not have heard that or hear a lot about it, but that we changed chemicals under Rick Toronto's one and a few of his last years, and we put polyorthophosphate in the water that's delivered to our system. That slows down the degradation of the steel pipes in our system, including the steel pipes in your backyards. And that made a lot of impact on our leak history. We did. Sorry about that. So in the meters system, that was quite an investment, but that investment has paid off. We've sent out thousands and thousands of notices to our customers to let them know they likely have a leak on their system. That was a huge part of this demand dropping off as it has. So all of these efforts, although we have a lot more things we can do, the ones we have done have paid off. I put this estimate together in the last few weeks. This was the last time our reservoirs were full, and that was March of 2013. So if you follow this green line, these are the actual storage levels up to this point, and then an estimate going forward of where we'll be using 2007 demands. And so right now, I'm estimating that at the end of the year, with no conservation at all, we would end up in our reservoirs a little over 3,200 acre feet of storage. Now, if we had 2008 demands, which was before most of our conservation efforts kicked in, this is what happens. We would be actually empty September, October of this year, it goes negative for effect. But the difference is 4,400 acre-feet of water that we are better off now in this drought situation than we would have been without the efforts that we've put forth so far. Those are a result of the 1990s pipe replacement, the zinc orthophosphate I talked about earlier. Billy Road pipeline replacement, we got a grant that paid for half of that. That was Billy Road from Clark over to Pence. When that work was being done, they found multiple leaks near the drainage way that you cross through the middle of that road. We were estimating hundreds of acre-feet a year that were leaking out of that pipe, and rather than our normal leaks, they were going right into the drainage and disappearing. So we were never finding them, we were never told about them. It was before we started real heavy leak detection, and that itself created a big benefit. Leak detection now for, I believe, the last 5 years, we've done that annually. We hire a contractor that specializes in this. They have computer technology mixed with listening devices that will allow them to find leaks on our mains and pinpoint where they are. And so they tell us a location of where a leak is indicated, and our crews go out and dig those up, and we have had very few dry holes. They're very good at what they do, and it's been very successful because they get those when they're half a gallon or a gallon a minute, and we're fixing them long before they grow really big and start leaking a lot of water. And again, the new meter system, I talked about that a little bit. I think it's been a huge benefit to this community in reducing our demands. We've been working on long-term drought supply options. We've got 4 that we're looking at. One's Lake Oroville. There's a presentation on our website where I covered most of these. I'm not going to go into them in detail tonight. Just want you to know that we've been working on this. This all came out of our 2008 water supply report that made us realize we need about 3,000 acre-feet of imported water, and we need it during droughts, and that would actually sustain us for many, many years. So one option is Lake Oroville, and the current way that would work would be an agreement with Del Oro Water Company, who operates the Lime Saddle District down Pence Road. So we would have to cooperate with them in the increasing a treatment plant, some pipe enlargement, and pump station increasing to be able to bring water from Lake Oroville up into our system. And of course, they'd be interested in that well because they would like to transfer water up to the Pines. The Tuscan Aquifer, that's one other option. Initially, we looked at drilling new wells down in the valley and bringing a pipeline up Neal Road. More recently, I've started discussions very early with Cal Water Chico about an agreement with them and an intertie pipeline down Skyway. And what that would do, that actually has a two-way benefit to it. We would be able to receive water in dry years that we need to get us through droughts, and then in the years that we do have water, they would be able to take water from us and lessen their impact on the aquifer in the valley. So it's got a lot of potential benefits, but it's very, very early in the process. Wells within the district, we've talked about them for quite a while. One of the things about drilling wells up on the ridge is you're drilling in a situation where the only groundwater is in fractured rock aquifers. And so what that means is there's pockets of water under the ridge, but you don't know where they are, you don't know how much they hold, so you're going to spend about $100,000 to drill a test well, and you may get a decent well. We have one that we've drilled that gives us 225 gallons a minute, sustainable, and we drilled another one over off of Nunley that turned out to only give us 70 gallons a minute, so we ended up, it wasn't even worth investing in developing that well. So while it's a possibility, it's got a bit of a gamble that comes with it. The last one is the Miocene Canal. We've been working with PG&E for about 5 years on this idea, and it's still just an idea. They have their own regulatory issues that they need to get through, before they can even enter into negotiations with us. But the Miocene Canal runs on the west side of town. You may be familiar with it. It's below the hospital. The head dam is almost directly down the hill from our treatment plant. So although the Miocene Canal may have its problems, where we would take water is about 100 to 150 feet below the head dam. So that any problems with the canals wouldn't be ours. And we'd build an intake structure off the canal and a pipeline up to our treatment plant. Be a couple 1,000-foot lift, so it's not going to be cheap water. But it would go into our treatment plant on the raw water side, and so it would be totally under our control for treatment and delivery. A little about our current situation. There's our main reservoir is Paradise Reservoir. That stores 11,500 acre feet. Magalia, under its current restrictions, only stores about 800 acre feet. So right now, you can see the history here going back to 1998, and then we've thrown a couple others in over time. So we're right here in the red, so we're behind our normal situation. Usually we're filling at least by March, April 1st, and then we're drawing down through the years, and then we get the fall rains and early winter rains. This line right here is 1977, and you can see that the reservoir got very low then. And then this white line is 1991, our most recent dry year. So we're better off than we were there, but we're much better off than we were in 1977. This takes all those lines and averages them out into this grayish line right here. The yellow line is where we were last year, and this red line is where we are right now. In January, we had a lot of concern, and into February, but those storms helped us immensely that we saw in February and into March. We're 77% of average storage as of today, and we're actually 77% of total storage as of today. That's about 2,875 acre feet less than we normally are this time of year. This is a new chart that I started developing in January when we started having our concerns about a dry year. And it's much better than it was, because at that point it went straight across and it dropped way down here. But this is my estimate. I keep moving it forward of where we'll be. This is 2013 demands and applying them to this calendar year. And the red line is a do-nothing line, no reductions, no change, 7,000 acre feet of usage. And we expect that would leave us a little less than 3,000 acre feet going into winter. This is the other extreme. That's a 50% reduction right there. That would leave us almost 6,000 acre feet of carryover storage. At this point, it's probably pretty drastic. And then somewhere in the middle, we'll carry over around 4,000 acre feet of storage. Those early concerns brought us to establish a drought committee, and I worked with that drought committee to evaluate our rate structure. Right now, our rate structure is established in a situation where it is not conservation friendly. There's not incentives out there for our customers to conserve, because, let me remind you right now, we're not recommending this for immediate adoption. Early January, we were considering it. At this point, no. But we have a 68% income that's fixed from those service charges, and only 32% is based on the consumption of our customers. So for them to go out in their yard and change their sprinklers to a more efficient sprinkler, or risk their lawn in their mind and turn their watering back from 30 minutes to 25 minutes, at the end of the month, their bill is not much different. And so a conservation rate will make it worth their time to dial those irrigations down to where they're the right amount of water for the lawn and not overwatering. And maybe investing in better sprinklers that cover more ground with less water. For that. We're also proposing in these rates a reduction in the fixed charge for most customers. So we're not just ratcheting up the consumption charge to make it more balanced. We're actually taking some of the fixed charges back and putting that into the consumption. And the underlying goal of the committee was to appreciate those customers that have been saving water all along and establish a rate structure that harms them as little as possible and gives an incentive for higher water users to cut back. This is an idea of our spread as PID customers. So 74% of our water demand each year is residential. So reaching out, making an impact to our residential customers makes a huge impact on our water supply. The next highest is multifamily. That's apartments, care homes, things like that. They make up about 12% of our annual usage. Businesses about 10%, and that includes local agencies. And then irrigation is just 3% of our total demand. Our irrigation customers have made a big effort themselves, as ag as a whole community has, in reducing their use of water. Our local growers have done that as well. So here's a snapshot. There's more information in a couple of reports that you can find on our website, but here's the kind of condensed version that's a little easier to see. Right now, our residential customers have an A rate or a B rate. The A rate customers are those that have shown us an experience of conservation. So they use less than 85 units in an entire year. We have some B customers that can use that in a month. So they're really doing their part. And so they, in the past, had a lower service charge as a result of that. Our B customers were at $30.37 right now. And one thing we found through our evaluation is our tiers are a little too generous. Before our rates go up in tiers, you're getting quite a bit of water before you start hitting tier 2, and a lot of water before you start hitting tier 3. And I won't go into the others. I'm going to mainly focus on these residentials tonight. So what we're proposing going forward is getting everybody in the same boat. So those B-rate customers up here that we're paying $30.37, they'll go down to $22.95. But these tier quantities will come into play much sooner than they have in the past. And the price of water for each tier is an increase from previous. And at the end of the day, when you analyze an average residential customer, the average residential A customer will pay about 71 cents more a month. But with the higher tier rates, they do just a little bit more conservation. They can even eliminate that. Our B residential customers, the increase is about $2.50 on average a month under this proposal, but they have the ability to make conservation efforts that will take that back down to an average bill rather easily. So it's all about trying to give them a financial incentive to make those changes, like I said earlier, changing those sprinkler heads, shower heads, all those different things that you can do to save water. They'll have the incentive not only to spend the money, but also to spend the time to research it and figure out what's right for their yard. What's being proposed to the board, and they've seen this in writing, and next Wednesday night they'll consider adopting these as regulations of the district, some conservation measures that are in the written packet I'm going to highlight the top ones. Some of them are watering hours and duration. One of the big things we want to focus on is putting water on outdoor irrigation at the appropriate time and making sure that you're putting it at the appropriate amount of time so that you're not overwatering your lawn and your landscape. No runoff. One of the key issues is no runoff from those sprinklers into the gutter, onto your driveway, down the street. Those things need to be taken care of and fixed, because that's a true waste of water. No washing of hard surfaces. There's a lot of people out there that love to spend their morning hosing down their driveway. They may get a little mental reprieve doing that, but we can't afford to do that practice anymore. Hosing down driveways, washing down houses, those are things we can't afford to use water. There's provisions if you're prepping for a project. If you're going to seal your driveway with a sealer, yes. If you're going to paint or stain your house, yes, those will be allowed. They'll be allowed with a pressure washer, which uses much less water than a hose with a nozzle on it, but those things will be allowed. You must fix leaks. We've been notifying people for quite a few years now of potential leaks, and we have some people that just don't take action. And one of the things I'm proposing is you're going to have a time frame where you got to fix that leak. You need to find it and you need to fix it. We may need to fine-tune the parameters of, if it's a small leak and it's hard to find, maybe we'll figure out a way where they can prove they tried and they just haven't found it yet. But we need to have something in place that when we find a leak or suspect a leak on a customer system, they need to fix that. Vehicle washing with shut-off nozzles only. So at this point, there's still probably a few people out there that wash their car, they hose it off, and then they throw that hose out onto the lawn and let it run while they're soaping up their car. We want to remind them that that's not a good practice. And as Ward talked about earlier, drinking water on request is one of the things we're proposing. And like he said, it's 8 ounces, 12 ounces of water. But it takes water to make the ice that goes in that glass. It takes water to fill the glass, and it takes a lot of water to wash the glass. So to have it put on the table and half the people not touch, it's just not worth it. We're going to be more active in talking to our customers about good water use practices. And this is an example of a door hanger we've developed so that if we see people doing practices that aren't appropriate, we can hang this on their door, mark which one's appropriate, let them know, hey, this isn't right, and we need your help in getting through this drought. We also will be developing and rolling out a hotline. A lot of people in this drought are going to be wanting to call and say, Joe down the street, sprinklers runs for 3 hours, and a couple of things. One, we'd like to give them a way to report that without having to confront the neighbor. And two, the reason for the hotline is it allows people to call in and leave a message without taking the time of our customer service staff, because we only have 4 people in the office, and it can get quite busy in there. So things like this we're going to do to try and help get through this situation. So wrapping up, my recommendations to the board for this year going forward, in addition to those conservation measures that I feel we need to adopt as a permanent rules, because they're not really drought response issues, they're just wise water use issues. That's setting a 25% community-wide reduction goal. One of the things that has always bothered me as a water manager is in drought situations, and their community's doing it this year, they will go and immediately call for a 25% mandatory restriction on water use. Well, people that are wisely using their water or have a conservative way of handling their water, that 25% is a lot harder to obtain. And the guy that just uses it however he felt, it's pretty much easier for him to reach that goal, and I don't think that's fair. So one of the things we're doing, we took that into play on the rate structure that we're looking at, but also it comes to me into setting a 25% community-wide goal. We're going to try and make sure everybody knows we're all in this together. It's not a one guy thing. It's something we need to come together as a group and get through, and we can do that. We can do that well. And so we will be working to, at minimum monthly, reporting out to our community to let them know how they're doing with this request we're making. Enforcement of conservation measures. You can have these measures as a regulation, but they need teeth. And part of next week's meeting, we'll be adopting those teeth. My initial thoughts, and this will be debated by the board and they'll ultimately decide, because it could get more harsh or less, is that there's a set of people out there that you're going to hang those door hangers on and tell them 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. They're not going to care. Well, we need a mechanism so however many times the board decides they're notified of this practice and they're ignoring us, then at the minimum, all of their water needs to be charged at the highest tier, or 2 times, or 3 times, whatever the board ultimately decides. But there needs to be teeth in these conservation measures for those people that just don't want to do their part. Just covered that. The other thing I'm proposing this year is an outdoor residential watering schedule, so that it will make a big impact. Just that one little case. You got Sacramento that's on 1 day a week, and in some communities are on 2 and 3 days a week. I don't think our situation's that dire, but I do think that getting people to water every other day will give them adequate time to keep their yards healthy and save us quite a bit of water. So I'm proposing that as well. And then adopting a conservation-based rate structure through our normal process. That's in our world, in our lingo, Prop 218. The board finally adopts a proposed rate. It goes out to the customers for review, and they have an opportunity to give the board feedback and protest that if they don't like it. But I'm proposing that we do that over time this year under our normal process. We made a little adaptation to our new motto. I think it only lasted about a month before we needed to have a little zing on it for this year, and that's our water, save it for our future. And as I said earlier, our future is as early as next winter. Thank you very much.
Now is the time for public questions and comments. How many cards do you have? No cards. Nope. Okay. Come on up and talk on the subject. Try to make comments and ask questions. Try to keep it to 5 minutes.
Anyway, here's some suggestions for you. One thing, he talked about the aquifer. Well, for your information, got to stop pumping water out of the aquifer down in the valley. That has to stop. Now, for your information, National Geographic come out with a whole book on aquifers around the world, and it's what has happened in these places where they pumped it down. Buildings have fallen down. When the water goes out, down goes the ground. Down in Durham, it's already dropping, so and it takes 10 years for that water to be replaced. It's just something for your general information. I'm full of it. The next thing is to use your bathtub water. If you have bathtub in your bathtub and you fill it with water, use that water with a bucket to flush your toilet, rather than flushing your toilet, because that's 5 gallons down the drain every time you flush it. Okay, the next thing is, shower with a neighbor's wife. No, that can't be right. Let's see, what the next one was. Oh, another thing is that you can put, if you have the money, what's the biggest thing? When you have a shower, you run the water till it gets warm. Okay, you have these heaters which have been, it's a little bit to install this thing, but it preheats the water right at where it's going to be used. That way you don't run the water to fill up the bathtub or to have a shower. And that would be a big saving. Same with the washing machine. And another thing, am I running too long here? Another thing is, if you could, when you send your next bill out, say, ask the restaurants, volunteer if you can, not to serve water. Every time you go there, they give you 2 glasses of water that nobody drinks. Well, you multiply that runs into hundreds of gallons of water that don't get used. Maybe you could ask the restaurants if a person wants water just to ask for it. And I don't know if you can do that or not, or is that a police state? I don't know. The other one, preheater, we got the gas one. Oh, another one would be, ask on your brochure that you send out, if people see water leaking coming in the road or someplace that you would probably not find, because you can't send that guy around to do everything, to phone it in to you that there's a leak. We think there's a leak because there's water coming up out of the road. You know, that would save you a lot of time. And I've seen them, and I phoned up and they always go and check it out. Oh, the National Geo, we got that. Water leaks in the shower with your wife. Preheater, but the preheater is a lot of restaurants. I've made 2 or 3 heaters. You can buy them, and what it does, it's just the Paradiso they have a big one up because the water lines are too long before it gets to the sink. So this preheater, its electric thing, is right at the sink, and that is a terrible. I bet it cut their water bill way down. I think that pretty well covers it. But those are just ideas that. Now, another thing is, just to get, maybe you can ask the high school students to say, look, we got a drought problem, and you get points if you send in ideas for saving water. You know, some of these students are pretty smart. Others are marginal. But some are pretty smart, and they like to participate in something, and maybe we encourage the high schools or whatever to do that, and they would get credit for it. That's just an idea. Okay, thank you for your time.
Yeah, Mike Spees, 1770 Forest Glen. I'd like to encourage the board to adopt the new rates now. It is clear that municipalities that use a rate structure that encourages conservation, people will save water. Because, you know, what George said was true. Those of us that conserve water will do it regardless of the rate structure, but the rest of folks need a little incentive. I think it's an important concept here. It is on your side to show that it actually works. Thanks.
I'll keep it under 5 minutes. I think that was a great presentation. I hope there's a way we can get it to more of the public, encouraging them to look at the website or see how you can get the whole thing again. Some way we can rerun it on television or something. Great idea. I didn't see anything in it, however, such as the program that Cal Water did last year. You know Mike Pembroke, ask him. They had a little packet where they passed out a spring-loaded nozzle, quick shut-off nozzle, a reduced flow shower head in it that they gave away to everybody that came in and attended the little educational element they had. So if for 15 minutes worth of education in their office, you got this little packet of materials that help to conserve water. I know if you buy 1,000 nozzles, it's going to be kind of pricey, but there ought to be some way that we have something to offer if somebody comes to the office and says, hey, I hear you want us to do some conserving. I don't have any of these fancy things. What do you suggest? What do you have? What can we get? And maybe we could get, a handful of them at an incredible discount, and we can invite people to come in and say, hey, if you need this, we have them here either at a reduced cost or free, but you got to get a little education from us too, and give them a continuous roll video. They sit down in a conference room, they get 5 minutes worth of education, sort of a summary of this kind of stuff, and then you send them on their way with a free nozzle or something like that. Thank you.
I always think of it as, the reason people are out there is because they know we're going to do it. Please second.
I like a positive comment.
Okay, board, I see nothing, we're going to bring it to the board, and this will end your participation. We're not going to have any action tonight. If we were going to have action, we would give you some more time to talk about it after we but there will be no action. It'll be on April the 2nd at 6:30 at Okay, back to staff. Does staff want to add anything?
No, I can cover it.
Directors?
I'll ask a question. We discussed the raising of the legal have the ability entire process through frame it takes to get through that process. We heard one member of the public recommend get this voluntary encourage people to volunteer.
Address that a little. When we talked about doing it under an emergency early on, we were looking at 50% cutback. And even though we said investment will probably correct me or hopefully support me, when we said we could do it under an emergency measure, we also said there's some risk to that. And we would have to follow it up with a Prop 218 process. I think with our water supply in its current state, the risk goes up that we're just kind of trying to beat the process. And I think if we start it, it can be implemented early enough to make an impact.
How long will it take?
It's probably about a 60-day process.
Yeah, remember the process is staff will do some analysis of cost of service, and the district's rates have to be tied to cost of service, cannot exceed it. So that takes some time. George has already put in most of the effort on that. The board will go ahead and adopt the proposal. That starts a 45-day comment period. We send out notices to each customer, and as George said, the customers have a chance to review it. They could submit comments, objections. At the end of the 45 days, the board considers the item again. They hold a public hearing, and then, assuming there's no majority protest at that time, the board could then implement the rate change.
Because of all of the work that we've already done with the analysis, we know what our costs are. And this is just fixed portion. I think that's pretty, like you say, it could be done. Have that meeting versus that we get the 45-day waiting period to receive comments, receive those. But it would take all of 60 days or 70 or 80 or 90 days.
The public hearing can be done in a special meeting. George, if you don't mind, I have a comment, and it's kind of related. Would you go back? I think it's one slide. This kind of, no, the save our, yeah, save it for our future. I absolutely support the board. Conservation is a worthy goal. It's something that we ought to do every year because I'm in agreement that we're in a perpetual drought and we're always one dry winter away from curtailments, which is not good for the community, it's not good for the businesses here, and everybody else that relies on water. But the flip side of that is the district enjoys 3 water rights, 2 post-1914 permits, and 1 pre-1914 appropriative right. The pre-1914 right is relatively small in terms of water rights. It's pretty much set in stone. The 2 post-1914 rights are permits. They're not licenses. And for the audience, the difference is it's really, during the permit period, you have to prove that you've actually developed your customer demand, you've developed your needs for water in other areas, and you're actually using the permitted amount. So it's a bit like a lease on the car. You don't actually own the car, you're kind of borrowing it or renting it. And that's the equivalent here. We have 2 water right permits. So when you start implementing rate structures and aggressive conservation, you risk at some point going to license for a lesser amount of water. So it's a fine line. You certainly want to conserve, but you also, when you have a permit, you want to use it because you do want to have that water right for future growth. Yeah, I wouldn't characterize it as an emergency, but you know, George has pointed out in the past, and he's correct, that the water code is supposed to address this situation, and you're not supposed to be penalized for conservation. Well, the water board doesn't necessarily adopt that mindset. For example, we're negotiating going to license on the district's earliest water right, and we are only allowed to look back during the terms of the last extension of time. The permit is actually dated from 1916, thereabouts. So it's very old, and we've been getting extensions over the years. The last extension, I think, was for 10 years. And the Water Board is saying you can only look back in that 10-year window. We can't go back to the 40s or 50s or even to the early 90s when the district's water use was much higher. So yes, the Water Board and the laws do allow you to consider conservation, and it's supposed to not hurt you. But in reality, if the board adopts this position where you can only look back during the last time extension, it does kind of penalize you. So I just want to have you keep that in mind when you're considering these policies. Not to discourage you, but just to think about it for future, maybe non-drought years.
That's one of the upsides to the Cal Water intertie project, that you would actually be able to use water. We'd probably put more water in the aquifer by selling them water than we would take from the aquifer. That gives us the ability to perfect that permit and use that water that we're permitted to, but still have the comfort level of knowing that we've got a return supply when we need it.
George, you referred to the Cal Water intertie going down there. The reason that they would buy water from us is that since they don't have to pump it up out of the aquifer, they would be getting it at less cost.
Well, it's yet to be determined because there's no pricing been discussed. believe it or not, they have a feeling of protecting our natural resources. And they know that the number of wells and the amount that they use has drawn down the aquifer and had an impact. They're mostly looking for ways, like we are, to bring in an imported supply to lessen their impact on the supply that they have.
It just seems to me that it goes into a community pond down there, and then we have somebody else drilling additional wells. Now we're putting it in the aquifer and somebody else taking it out.
Yeah, it could happen, but there's a depression around the city of Chico. They're having an impact, and likely that will be less in their area because of that depression.
But I have a couple points. I'll make one of them in the director's comments. First one, we've had a Water Conservation Committee functioning for the past year. One of the first things we started planning with that Water Conservation Committee, the picture started that up here with the Paradise Lake facility, put on a wise water usage for our larger youth. We did that in February. It was quite a success. I keep almost weekly get comments from people changing a lot of their systems. Some of them are very positive on what they've done in the past. Really a well thought of what we're having another conservation committee meeting on the 1st of April, which is next Tuesday. One of the things that we're going to be planning at that session is one for residential water conservation. We will be looking at not only landscaping, but the primary one that will come out in February, we primarily look at landscaping. That's where all the water goes. And we'll be looking at the whole water conservation for residents. And that meeting is open to the public. We have some of the members here, and that's how dedicated our members of the conservation committee. If you raise your hand, I'd appreciate it. Anybody else want to come in? These are people that have that happen. So we'd like to invite you. We have several other items on the, we have several other items on the agenda, but one of the things we'll be doing is putting together this residential wide water. Whole gamut of. Yes.
We said that we weren't going to take any more questions from the public. If you do it, I got to let everyone do it.
Governor of our state said that he was going to take water from everybody's water system. And I don't know, I'm sure that was on the television. And what was the result of that? Nothing about what the governor.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is actually, it wasn't specifically the governor, but certain state agencies were suggesting that agricultural districts, agricultural diversions of water would not be entitled to divert, notwithstanding any water right or contract they may hold for water. And that is not the case. Not true. There are many agricultural districts and municipalities that are being curtailed either under the terms of an agreement. For example, many of the ag districts in the Richville area, Nelson area, they're expecting a curtailment this year of 50%, which is many hundreds of thousands of acre feet. And
They don't need it.
no, I
You guys are bad people. You gotta find a state, you gotta stay on top.
I agree. We got that one under control.
I think we succeeded in Paris. We were always on top of it.
Now that I did it to you, is there anybody else want to?
That's something you're doing. Please come up.
Hi, Belinda Ziegler. 959 Thomason Lane. I'd like to ask Dustin a question about establishing the conservation tables, and you mentioned that we may end up waiving some of our water rights based on 1914 case law. Is it 1914, 1916? However, what I'm asking is, why can't we put in a clause that says that we're not going to waive our water rights that we've already established?
Do you want me to answer that? You're negotiating with the state, which is always difficult. So when it's a negotiation, we could certainly propose things like that. And unfortunately, they haven't unleashed me to fully attack the State Water Resource Control Board, because I don't think we ought to look back only 10 years. And I think it's inconsistent with water code. But when they unleash me, it costs a lot of money. So they've got to consider that as well. But you know, it's a tough position. You wonder why some of my predecessors, the board's predecessors, why we didn't go to license earlier, and I don't have a clear answer for that. But it's definitely a fine line between conserving, which we certainly should do, and then saving our water in the form of perfecting using our water right for the future. And I'm glad I'm not in those seats. It's a tough decision.
Thanks.
Anybody, any other directors have comments or questions?
I think we better cut you off. You come next week to the PID meeting.
I'll be there.
The other one question I had is if we do a rate increase, do it through 218, can we say if next year we get a lot of rain, we have to go through 218 again to change it up?
I'll answer that. I'll answer part of that. What we'd be proposing is adopting a two-prong rate structure, so that we would adopt a conservation-based rates for going forward, but then we'd also adopt a drought response rate structure. So if we go forward, we don't have to go through Prop 218. So we talked about a Tier 4, hammer rate, for lack of a better term. Those kind of things would be in the drought side of the rate structure. We may consider the tiers to be a little higher than 8 and 15 on normal years, and dropped back during drought years. So those are the kind of things that there are a lot of options to be evaluated and how that impacts our revenue.
Yeah, I would add to that the board always has the discretion to charge less rates. So Prop 218 only is applicable when you propose an increase. So as George said, you're probably, if the board wants to move forward with this, it's probably going to be a drought rate and then a quote-unquote normal year rate. You could also, some hypothetical year in the future, like 1983 was an extremely wet year, one of the wettest years on record. And if we have spilling reservoirs through June, the board could say, it would be really nice to reduce these rates to encourage use of water, because we'd like to have a really good water usage year. And this isn't going to impact our future as far as draining supplies for the potential next year. And if it wasn't used, it'd really be lost to Butte Creek and eventually to the ocean. No, only when you exceed the pre-existing threshold.
I thought that was the answer, but I want to. Okay, now is the time for, anybody else, want to hear anything more from the board tonight? Okay, Now we're going to have director's comments. This is where the directors talk about things that aren't on the agenda. Bill?
I'm glad to see all this information come out so far. This is Dustin, if you come to the next meeting.
Yes, I'd like to, I have one first, I would like to thank the Drought Committee, George and his staff, for putting this presentation together this evening. What if you can go online and read this in a little more detail on it. Strong approach that we recommend to the Conservation Committee and take it here. I'm just going to show one part here. On page I-15, recommendations for further conservation measures that we're talking about. It really goes through and gives us where we have the least bit of inconvenience to us as water users. I really believe I'm just going to use E. Water fountains and decorating water features. Water fountains and decorating water features must have a water. Is that an answer? So that's all about the water fund. Producer makes the water, you can have a beautiful water fountain. That's what you have for your team, not only tonight, since I've been on the board for the last year or so, you're quite free. We're very blessed to have.
Thank you.
very nice,
Appreciate everyone who came out and read the news. Tell them about the next meeting.
Director Kellogg already told you it's more entertaining next week, so it's that good, we should sell tickets.
Thank you, we're adjourned.
She's kind of been interested in the drought, so
Good job, guys.
not a very good day.